Welcome to my guide for the lore of the Little Waaagh. In this guide, I will go over every single spell in the lore and teach you how to best use them to make sure you're getting the most out of them in your battles. The lore of the Little Waaagh is the less directly aggressive of the two greenskin lores. It features more spells that give you a more subtle advantage rather than just focusing on doing as much damage as possible with a series of explosions. This means it requires a tiny bit more finesse to use, but if you can master it, then it can prove to be incredibly useful. There are several great debuffing spells that will make the job of the rest of your army far easier, so finding the best time to use them can make your Winds of Magic go a seriously long way. Of course, no spell lore would be complete without at least a couple damaging spells, and as you'll come to find out, this one is no different. It's also one of the cheaper lores out there, with 4 of the 6 spells being under 10 Winds of Magic. Also, if you haven't guessed by now, this lore is exclusive to the greenskins. Starting off as usual, we have the passive of the lore, Sneaky Stealing. It targets enemies map-wide and is only active whilst the Little Waaagh spellcaster is casting a spell. It causes enemy spellcasters to have a slower power recharge rate for 25 seconds, and that's it. Even for a passive, this is pretty weak, since it relies on the enemy to bring a spellcaster and then to be wanting to use them at the exact moment that you cast this spell. Plus, it's not like they won't ever get any Winds of Magic, they'll just have to wait longer for them. But again, since it's a passive, you can't really complain too hard. Our first castable spell is Sneaky Stabbing, and it's an augment spell. It costs 4 Winds of Magic, has a 28 second cooldown, and a 200 meter cast range. It can be cast on the caster themselves or allied units, and grants plus 25% armor piercing damage, and plus 24 melee attack for 19 seconds. There's also no option for an overcast. These are some chunky buffs, and the better the units that you use this on, the more value you're going to get out of it, so make sure to target the most high damage units you can. This will cause them to go from your average elite frontline to complete killing machines for the duration of the buff, but 19 seconds with that big of a buff is plenty of time to make a big impact on the outcome of the battle, as long as they're fighting and hitting for the full time. This means it's wise to use on some units that aren't going to leave the battle anytime soon, and that are fighting something that will last the full duration so they don't spend the second half chasing. Vindictive Glare is next up, and it's a missile spell. It costs 4 Winds of Magic, has a 29 second cooldown, and a 250 meter cast range. It can only be cast on enemy units, and deals moderate magical damage that is most effective versus single entity. It also helps if the target is large and lightly armoured, as the missiles have a higher chance of actually hitting their target and doing some significant damage. Overcasting increases the cost to 8 Winds of Magic, as well as increasing the number of missiles fired, and therefore, the amount of damage that the spell does. For the low cost of the overcast, I can't really see a reason why you wouldn't want to use it, unless the unit you're targeting doesn't need the extra damage, but to be honest, at that point, why are you casting the spell at all? This is one of those spells that you want to use when you have a few Winds of Magic left to throw around, and just want to get out some final damage before the spellcaster becomes useless. It's not fantastic, but it could be a lot worse.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. Are you an epic gamer in search of some fashionable garments? You crave the attention of the lady, but in your ragged burlap loincloth she won't even give you the time of day? Introducing COLONELDAMNEDERS merchandise, the only way to go if you're trying to get into the lake of the lady. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, and even mugs in a variety of designs that are sure to garner you some divine favour. Every item also comes in a variety of colours, so you can pick one up for each day of the week to always be styling and profiling. You can even get stickers so you can add some pizzazz to anything. Your car, your computer case, hell, you can even stick one on your mother. So, if you want the confidence to commune with the lady, then there's no better way than to acquire some of the most epic merch this side of the internet. All the info you need is just mere clicks away in the description below. And now we return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
Next up we have Guzelfixit, which is a hex spell. It costs 7 Winds of Magic, has a 43 second cooldown, and a 200 meter cast range. It can be cast on the ground or directly on enemy units, and causes units within a 40 meter area effect to suffer from minus 18% charge bonus and minus 48% to speed and charge speed for 24 seconds. There is also no option for an overcast. These debuffs are obviously best used on units that rely on these stats to do the most of their work. This means units like Cav and Chariots will be getting targeted the majority of the time, and percentage-based debuffs like this mean the higher the tier of enemy units you target, the more value you're going to get out of the cast. So next time you're going against a faction like Bretonnia that relies almost entirely on Cav, bring this spell along and save yourself some pain. Itchy Nuisance is next up, and it's another hex spell. It costs 8 Winds of Magic, has a 44 second duration, and a 200 meter cast range. It can be cast on the ground or on enemy units directly, and causes units within a 40 meter area of effect to be debuffed with minus 30% base weapon damage and minus 24 melee attack for 25 seconds. There is again no option for an overcast. These debuffs are pretty huge and again will get more value the higher the tier of enemy units that you use them on. The best use case is for casting on the enemy front lines to give your units the advantage they need to take them down. If you use this spell in conjunction with Sneaky Stabbing on your own units, you can make it stupid easy for your front line to mill the enemies with relatively low magic cost. Other than that, this one is pretty self-explanatory. You just use it on high tier enemy front line to give your lads the advantage. Night Shroud is next and it's a hiding spell. It costs 11 winds of magic, has a 48 second cooldown, and a 200 meter cast range. It can be cast on the ground or on allied units directly, and causes units within a 40 meter area of effect to gain stalk and unspottable for 41 seconds, which essentially makes them invisible. Overcasting increases the cost to 17 winds of magic and doubles the duration to 82 seconds. The only factors to consider when choosing between the base spell and the overcast are if you need that extra time or not. If your sneaky flank only needs a brief use of invisibility, then go for the base spell. If you're planning a much longer sneak, then use the overcast. Either spell can be used for a variety of sneaky tactics, whether it's ambushing the enemies from a hidden location or waiting for them to get close before you surround them on all sides, so the only real limit on the usefulness of this spell is your own creativity. Finally, we come to the Curse of the Bad Moon, and it's a vortex spell. It costs 11 winds of magic, has a 47 second cooldown, and a 150 meter cast range. It can only be cast on the ground, and causes moderate magical damage in a randomly moving medium-sized area of effect for 22 seconds. Whilst moving, it disrupts unit formations and afflicts anything it hits with Dynasty Curse effect. I say anything it hits because this damage has no allegiance, and with randomly moving effects, the damage is as likely to go on your own units as it is the enemy, so you want to make sure that when you cast it, you keep it in as many enemy units as possible. Overcasting increases the cost to 16 winds of magic and the duration to 44 seconds, meaning it can stick around for a very long time and do a massive amount of damage if you get lucky. Now unfortunately the damage both spells deal isn't incredible versus armor, so you want to either target less armored enemy units or get super lucky and hit the units so many times that the armor doesn't even matter. I think that Overcast only really needs using when you have such a massive amount of enemy units that you're certain you'll keep hitting them for the full duration, because if not, you're just paying 5 more winds of magic to watch shit dance over the hill. That concludes this guide on the lore of the Little Waaagh. If you enjoyed this video at any point, then leave a like as it does help out a lot. Leave a comment of anything you think I missed or should include in future videos. If you'd like to see more videos about Total War Warhammer, there are links in the description to my series. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, maybe click that subscribe button so you stay up to date. After all, it is free. For now though, I was COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I'll see you next turn.